The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable. Well, Jean-Jacques, welcome to the Aesthetics of Leadership podcast. This has been a conversation I have been wanting to have for quite some time. And for the listening audience, Jean-Jacques, aka Triple J, aka J, we connected through a mutual friend and working together with Timon Creek with the gifted program and the gifted portal that you guys have in helping people build a brand. And Timon was the social media expert. But then I think one of the most intriguing aspects of the program, Jay, was really what you went through from a business development perspective. So in doing my research on you, I found that that is not a new thing for you. You have had something special, something gifted within you that has been influencing people in the world for quite some time. So I'd love to know your origin story from back at university, making some significant decisions in business as well as life at a very young age that I think now has brought you to a pinnacle of artificial intelligence integration and scaling tech businesses. So it's just fascinating to me the story arc that I see in doing research on you. But I'd love to hear your interpretation of uh, who is Jean-Jacques and how did you get to be doing what you're doing today on a global scale?
Course, man. So let me start at a point. Like I always like that question when someone asks you, "Who are you?" Because that defining question is something I believe that you can never truly answer, not linearly, but because the whole point here is that when you answer that question, it's not about who you are, obviously, but it's this person that you're building towards becoming. So it does not matter who I am today, but it matters that I understand like this one topic, and it might kind of flip the. It might sound a bit spiritual, but woo, but like when you kind of break back like DNA structures and stuff like that, when you're able to really understand a few questions on a personal development perspective, it's really all about who you actually want to become. Because in this process, through you doing stuff every single day, if you ever read the book Man, I think it's called Man Creative Meaning, or Man Findeth Meaning, or something like that, and
Man's
just in
search for
general.
meaning.
Yes, that one. So the whole, when you blend the spiritual perspective, a religious perspective, a worldview perspective, it's all about like these actions that we take every single day. And I'm not saying this is the full truth, but I'm just saying that this is my truth. What I found to be true throughout this process is that we're actively every day we're trying to do something right now, whether that's to stay busy, to stay connected, to stay feeling like the energy that we're feeling like there's actual meaning to life. And that actual meaning to life is that this thing that you're kind of like working on there, or this thing that you kind of want to become. And I say thing because really at the end of the day you can truly mold yourself into whatever you want to become based off of a few principles. And again, I will try my best to kind of just keep the woo-woo stuff kind of like one side, and just say it as it is, because I know there's a lot of listeners that will just maybe want the shorter version, and I love overcomplicating things, and it's something I've been something I've been working on. But it's kind of how my brain works, just in terms of I have like a systems brain. So you'll hear me many times talk about a bunch of topics, but then I'll kind of be able to kind of bring them together, and this is where artificial intelligence will come in to at the end of the question, or at the end of the big statement that you just kind of gave. Because at the end of the day, it's like all of the things that I learned throughout my journey. The first, I'll start there, just to kind of start at a point. Who am I? To who am I becoming? Number one. Second thing is basically when when I started first to try to understand more about myself, to try to understand where am I needed in this world, I only knew sport, like as a in my self development as a human, as a person, how I was there, where I was born and raised in the middle of nowhere in South Africa, in a railroad town. It's the first time I'm actually sharing this story. I probably will share this story more, but this is actually the first time I'm sharing the story on any sort of podcast or anything. But I'll give you the trunculated version of this in terms of like the journey that we're walking and, where it's going, because that's why I started with, it's not who I am, but it's where we're going. So where I'm from on that perspective is like this. So I was born in this town in South Africa in the middle of nowhere. My parents didn't have a bunch of money. But, like we never were dirt poor. There were times when kind of like, we had to kind of like really bad financial decisions were made, stuff like that happened, but it's okay because all of that stuff were things that were preparing me for this journey that, I'm walking. And that's why I solely and wholeheartedly believe that you're chosen for whatever you're doing right now. It's just whether you want to figure it out or not. Because the problems that you usually end up solving, or that which you usually end up like having this itch or this burn or this desire to share with the world, usually stems from something which was self-orientated, because the self-orientation will come right back to the God figure. And the God figure basically is like internal self and love and that kind of thing. But anyways, man, I really, really in my journey wanted to not be poor. Like I did not like that. I did not enjoy not having being able to kind of like buy the stuff that my other friends used to buy faster, having to save for things. I just didn't enjoy that feeling. So, like, no one in my family was really financially oriented. Like I said, bad financial decisions here and there just because of that's all they knew, which is fine. And that's just how things rolled out. But at the end of the day, from this middle of nowhere, you can actually check it up. I don't know if you've ever found it, but this middle of nowhere town, railroad situation. I went to high school in boarding school, basically. Like, how do you, is this even a different word for it in the US? Like, what do you guys call it when, so when you, so this town was like 100 kilometers from where my parents were actually living. So I was like busing back and forth and basically playing sport on that perspective. And again, that was only thing I thought I was ever good at. Like I was average at school. I would like barely getting C's and B's. Like if I would do really well, I could get a B and be like, wow, like, like, you crushed it. So, because that was me. I was always the Mr. I'll work hard, I'll figure it out kind of archetype. And lone wolf kind of figure. That was because I had no brother, no sister. And so I had to kind of like figure it out throughout this process. And I was always in this boarding school environment where there's always other people around me. So those were some of my DNA structures or my, my thought patterns and whatever, kind of where that is coming from. But this all led me to really understanding, like after high school, is that I thought, I had these self-conflicting thoughts and these barriers around my own brain and self, where it's like, I'm not really good at math, I'm not this and I'm not that. Love sport. I'm kind of, not bad at this working out thing. Maybe I should do that, whatever. But it all came down to me really understanding, okay, I need to at least put my toes in the water first year after school, need to kind of figure this stuff out, and luckily enough, I made the decision to go to this professional, what's it? It's like a high end, like a football club. When you will go play like D1 football, as people would say, it's kind of like the same thing, just in terms of like rugby in South Africa. I went to an academy, and then obviously we were like playing back and forth there. It wasn't pro yet. We were semi-pro, gonna, obviously make the tilt over to pro. But that was 1 year after school, because there I started to, study the, like a business degree in university. But anyways, before that, you mentioned something just before we started the call. You found something called the Gotham Ninjas. Now I don't know how you found that, but anyway, so Gotham Ninjas was basically my first ever stunt at business. I guess proper stunt is what I did was, in this boarding school, all dudes environment where, I created a mock-up basically of, it's like a gym merch brand at the time when Gymshark and stuff like that just started to get the traction that they were having. So I was like, you know what, that sounds fun. I can go out and create something. So I took like this old school laptop that I had, like this red laptop, and I took Photoshop, like the old school one, and I basically designed like so black shirt like I'm wearing right now, but I put some design on it. And yeah, it was called the black version, but twisted around, like the wording was like twisted around. So tail blap or whatever that was saying, I couldn't even remember. And then at the back there was like this little cross. I can still remember that. So basically, I was like building this little movement inside of the boarding school with all the guys called the Gotham Ninjas inside of the boarding school, which was a clan inside of the boarding school. So the clan inside of the clan, which we were then. So I was like going signing up names on a little list, like we were doing pre-sales, like hyping up the sales, like walking around showing everyone, yo, this is what's gonna look like. You in. Look at all these people that are already in. So I was like, you in. And then we just went break time, stuff like that. Recess, or I'm not sure what people call it. But anyways, point being is I walked around and I just signed up names, and we sold about 100 shirts. I can remember in terms of like how that went with the launch of getting the shirts. But anyways, so people told me then back then, I was like, you should focus on school. It's more important than doing that. So I was like, you know what? Okay, what do I know? I should probably kind of figure it out, in terms of that. So nothing ended up happening with that, because one was called Gotham Ninjas. Again, I guess the page is still live if you found it. One was called Gotham Ninjas, and the other one was called I think it was called SMG, which was called which was basically called South African Muscle Gang. But the point was that there was like a split between the two, and then the other one took off, and this one was just floating. But this was like a little split test, A/B split test in terms of what was working. But yeah, so that was the first ever stunt, man, and that brought me to that first year of rugby and stuff like that, playing that. But in that year, I also read my first book. Like in it, playing all. I was like amongst the professionals, walking around, moving with them, going out with them. Doing the stuff that the boys would do. Like kind of like that. As nuanced and as Orella, not the word's not nuanced, as naive as my brain was at the time. You need to learn things, and I was like going through this process of really trying to understand, what is this thing that I want to be focusing on? Because in that year, I firstly broke up with my ex-girlfriend, which I was dating for like 3.5 years. Luckily, you didn't find a song that I wrote for her, but which is a topic for another time. But anyway, so yeah, so then from there, like kind of was like going through this motions of things in that year, of that period. And it brought me to really just understanding that uh rugby, this sport, like, because I read my first book in that year. I think the first ever book I read was the Rich Dad Poor Dad classic. Someone gave it to me. I can't remember who gave it to me, but someone gave me this book, and on my free time after practice, I would like flip through the book, I would like read it, and like in the morning I was like, you know what, let me install this morning reading stuff. And then I was like, okay, let me try, at least push. I know I can build a discipline around it, and I'm like, I really don't like this stuff, but I'm gonna push. And then from there, it kind of like, it kind of just stuck. And then I started reading more and more and more. And that was when I was 19. Or yeah, it's my first ever book I actually read was 19. So I didn't read like before that. So like that was kind of like, the up and the down of that. But then that kind of like took me to this next process, because throughout that year I played the best sport I ever played in my life. It was the most fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot. But then in that year I started to spend a lot more time uh, in the how can I say this? On the weekend, for example, after that stuff with my ex-girlfriend. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think this is very important to a lot of young men, is to understand that you will, for an example, you will go through this phase of trying to find, like, I think your wife, your anchor, whatever you want to call it, your other half. Right now, I don't even have that, but I've learned a lesson. Okay, I've learned a lesson out of that. Is that stability that comes with, like, once you have found your other half, or a person that can actually help you on your journey, because that's what it is, right? If you look at biblical principles, it's what it is. It's when those two come together. But at the end of the day, what I learned through that phase was, like, obviously I went on this little road rage kind of effect, where me, as being a 19-year-old dude at the time, being angry at the world, not knowing why I was not going to marry this girlfriend I dated for like 3.5 years. All of that kind of stuff really took me through this thinking phase, where I was like on like call it what you want. I was like trying to enjoy having fun as much as I probably can in basically a 2-month sprint, a 2.5-month sprint. And then I was like, this is silly. Like, this is this is stupid, man. Like, I'm like, this like shouldn't be this easy, but this is stupid as well. I'm like, because like, it was like math was not hitting my brain. I was like, surely can't keep up with this. Like, this is stupid. Like that was the thing that was running in my brain. And then I was like, you know what? Because I spent a lot of time then, like basically going through, talking to God. Basically, that's what I was doing like a lot on the weekend. Call it what you want, but I was doing that, and I was trying to spend a lot of time in solitude. And also started somehow try to mess around with meditation and stuff back then because, I was trying to like do all this personal development stuff, trying to read all these personal development books, trying to go through all of these phases of everything that every guru was pointing left and right. And I was like, okay, well, if all of them are saying all this stuff, I'm just going to read everything. And then basically I'll pick something up. And then that's what I did. I was like hammering through all of these, normal books, I guess, these, I don't know how you can call it. Most personal development books are kind of the same. It's the same principle, how they're all written, just different stories, different characters. But that really helped me to kind of this alone time that I was spending in solitude. That's why I always will tell people, look, you're like the only way I believe this, and again, this is not the full truth, but this is what I believe. The only way you really figure out what your next move is or where you're supposed to be focusing on, if you have that question mark on your forehead, is that if you start asking the question of first, like, what do I want to be? What is the thing that I want to be spending my time on this planet? Like, what's that thing? Like, what is it? If you don't know what it is, like right now, then you just haven't spent enough time alone. Like, you really need to spend more time alone. And obviously it's connected to working on the personal development angle, which is at the end of the day, in this year, I learned some really interesting Russian principles, which came back down to everything being here. Like everything being here, like connected to personal development as a person and connected to basically really understanding yourself and the world around you. And once you obviously connect these worldviews, these beliefs, these everything, your thinking in your own brain can then find peace. That's what I found. Because until you have found peace in your own process, until you have found peace in your own thinking, can you no longer have a still brain. You cannot have a calm mind, like Naval always says, a calm. I don't know. Do you know Naval?
Hmm.
No.
Yeah,
So
Ravikant.
yeah. So his quote in terms of like, I think it was a fit body, calm mind, healthy, like something in terms of like family or something. You can't buy those things. So at the end of the day, it's like that calm mind effect. Ever since I was able to answer that one question, and obviously that is the thing that you need to work on. It's not like, oh, like I got it, right? It's like you learn things, you adapt, and then you come back to the principle. It's like, well, and that's why I shared that story with you in the beginning before we even started recording. It's like, even in my own life, exiting, I can't remember if you remember this, but exiting a phase, which I was saying, many of us will exit a phase. I will leave my job. I will go do a new thing. I will sell my business. I will go do a new thing. But many of those things, they will happen multiple times throughout a person's life. And sometimes people refer to it as like midlife crisis, or they give it these stupid names. And it's really stupid because at the end of the day, again, that's why it's all here. And and because it's all here, it's like, well, if you feel like it's a midlife crisis because you made it one. And at the end of the day, it's like really trying to understand, okay, for me, once I found peace in terms of like really trying to understand how I navigate my own path, it's brought me to be able to have peace, to be able to be like, okay, you know what? I understand these actions that I must do. If I do them every single day, I will get a little bit better at doing them. And if I do enjoy doing them, again, in business, for example, you won't like everything, but the components of it is what will allow you to become not only a better person, but like a better figure for others. Because at the
Mm.
end of the day, it's like I believe every man or woman, I guess, it goes both ways, but in this, because this is two guys having a conversation, I believe every man is a born leader. However, like not everyone does the work in order to really understand their own true inner potential when it comes to actually digging deep, asking the questions, and then going out to fulfill the vision that they have in their brain. This vision comes from many areas or many places. Now, if you go like this and you figure out your vision is whatever, fine, I don't care. But if you have something in your brain, I don't care if someone else printed it into your brain or if it's someone else's dream or whatever. I know that, for example, all those things are centered and connected to, again, coming right back to the God figure. Because at the end of the day, all of this stuff that we're doing, like I started in the beginning, it's like this work that you're doing, this energy that you're putting in, like all of that comes right back down to the self-love element, which is also God. Essentially, if you can't love yourself, like, what, like what's the point? But that's what I said. Like I've talked about so many things, but I'll try to, I try to align them in terms of where we are now.
Yeah, I'd love to address some of the key points you made there, Jean-Jacques. I believe that at least here in the West, the need for immediate gratification and to have the right answer when you're making these decisions seems to be the paralysis that men experience. They are unable to make a decision because they feel like who that makes them in the moment is who they will be forevermore. And there's so much gravity associated with the decision that the fear and anxiety associated with it is simply is simply too much. You made probably one of the toughest decisions a man could make here in the West. You left university, right? You became fascinated
Yeah,
with economics and business development, and you wanted to go try it on your own.
that's
That's a level of courage that I think is missing here in the West for the norm. And maybe it's my perception that it should be the norm, that men be warriors and take these risks and make these moves. But man, society can be pretty brutal in holding you to the image and expectation they set for you rather than
yes.
here. So I'd love your
Yeah, so
perspective on that.
yeah, so this will kind of really beautifully kind of connect with where I was in this sharing of the story. And I know I kind of jumped many places with doing it, but the whole point in me and on that perspective with why, because that's exactly where we were in the story, kind of perspective, is that the reason why I, got out of the traditional kind of schooling system, university kind of effect was I was exerting a lot of energy. Like I said, I started to read, and I didn't like it in the beginning. I don't think no one really likes it, but until you really get it, then I'm like, oh, okay, this is how this works. I was like, oh, okay, well, if you do a little bit more about this, then you might get a few brain cells. You might add a few, like you might add a few new perspectives. So then you're like, okay, well, why don't I do this more? So the whole point there is I actually, because you do fall in love with the act. So for example, you go to the gym, you fall in love with the act of self-improvement. But the same thing with your brain. And I mean, there's so many people that have said this. I'm not the first person to say this, but it's like you do need to gym your brain. Like you do need to work on it. So if you like, and that's one big component right now, where with artificial intelligence, for an example, is where a lot of people are automating their brain. They're automating their thinking process, and it will hit a lot of people at large scale. And I can even go down conspiracy paths with this, but at the end of the day, the technology, as powerful as it is, I call it the alien tech, but the alien tech is powerful as it is, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be automating your brain because your super brain, your computer, your super, you still need to train it. So again, just a little small note in terms of this story for whoever is watching this, please don't ever, ever automate your brain. Like you can automate other things, okay? Just don't automate your brain. But anyways, so back to the story on this component is I was learning from mentors directly in the West. That's what I was doing. I was exerting, going out of my way to basically. I was modeling at the time. I was so modeling, doing TVC stuff. So this is kind of like a little bit of acting stuff in between, and I had some sort of an agency at the time, which was like a content marketing agency, basically, for fitness pros. And I was like shooting content for them. I was like rolling for them, editing, making videos. That's kind of like where I picked up on my creative side on the digital side, because like I enjoyed it. Like, I started with doing it with one of my friends where we were like in the middle of nowhere. His brother knew how to do it. So I was just sitting there. I was like, this looks fun. So I was like, okay, let me kind of see how this works. But anyways, that component, I was doing all these things, trying to just make some extra money, some extra cash, so that I can just go and give it to someone that will show me the way, like show me the knowledge. Because there was a principle that someone taught me, and then they said, look, the only way that you buy time is if you buy someone else's knowledge or experience. And you technically can't buy experience, but you buy mistakes that they have made. So they give you the protocol, or they give you the steps, the guide towards what they figured out. But the evil part about, or not evil, it's just the internet and humans in general. Right now, there's tons of people that are trying to do that. They're trying to give you the guide, that they're trying to give you the steps without them even doing the work. So for an example, at the Gifted Academy, what we figured out, is that, for example, Tim cracked by himself. However, he figured out, he cracked that content model, right? In terms of his new way. He did it. He did it. He solved for it. And then I was just, doing the business, running a machine, running back and forth, adding to it as we can from a science perspective, trying to engineer things a lot better. Conversion rate optimization on the content, or whatever you want to call it, making it better. So because there's levels to that, obviously, right? So at the end of the day, that's kind of like that component, right? How they kind of connect. And that's why we solved, like, for a case study there. We exactly knew how we did it in our own unique way. And then we went and we provided that to more people, right? So at the end of the day, I want just to say this. If there are guys out there that want to start like an internet business, or that want to start like some, marketing style business or marketing style bro business, I just need you to understand one thing. And it's how this internet marketing game is actually played. If you're not aware, it's like there are like three top dogs up here. It's like three top dogs, whoever they are. Let's call them sales guy, marketing guy, let's say AI guy, whatever, because the AI is now so new, right? Now what's going to happen is these three top dogs, they're going to create little nodes of little groups, little communities that they have. They're going to teach people a bunch of stuff. They're going to create little nodes. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to create little nodes. They're going to do the same thing. And so information gets like filtrated, repackaged, filtrated into new avenues, which I'm not saying nothing is wrong with that. I'm just saying you need to understand that about that internet game to be able to tell, well, just to tell it what it is. Cut the crap in between wasting your time or giving someone money that don't need to do it. But whoever, it comes down to just, I always tell people, like, if you trust the person, if you love their work and you really want to work with them, then go work with them. Just do it. Because at the end of the day, it's like, that's also your path. But that's kind of how that's split up. But it's kind of almost lost my train of thought with that. The decision that I made with university all just came down to me doing this, doing this seeking of the knowledge effect, and looking at traditional system and looking at this non-traditional system, which is going directly to other business owners, like learning directly from them and really trying to understand their thinking process. And then what I was learning here, and the more I looked at this stuff, I was like, look, I get the statistics part of things. I really kind of wrap my head around that. But all this other crap feels like it's so outdated. And I'm like, look, because that was literally what was in my brain. I was like, well, like, what is this? Because, like, look at this and look at this. And I knew by the time in my own self, I would not last in a corporate structure probably longer than 2 months or maybe even a month. I just knew that, because in my own rebel nature growing up, like, I could backtrack this throughout my whole life. Like, I've always been that dude that would dress a little bit different, that would, well, not just dress different, but my actions would not be the same as the community, or not just say community, as society in general. I would, like, cut my hair a bit different, maybe wear a flat cap, and then all my friends would think I'm weird or whatever. And then next week they would wear it. So this kind of like path in my thinking, like, kind of led me to be able to make that decision, just to know that, hey, I'm willing to risk it, at least for the next 5 years. If I don't make a dollar, I will figure something out through this next 5 year period. Because at the time, I also knew that that's where my energy and focus is going to go into. If I can get 7 hours extra that I can push into this stuff, then I'm figuring something out here. So at the time too, I went through this phase of I got into this Forex stuff, like, throughout that channel. Don't know if you picked up on that, but I kind of like got into a channel there, in terms of that was also another taste of a different business. And there's actually people that are really good at doing that. Real traders,
Hmm.
they do exist. Like 95% of them ain't real, but the real ones do exist. But anyways, so that taught me a lot. I got scammed royally, which was fun, but also a great lesson. And then, went through that process and, I sacrificed about 2.5 years of my life through studying this business stuff and trying to figure out this trading stuff at the same time, but just hammering it out every single day on this business stuff. But it really and then fast forward, it came down to me having to make a decision between this. It's like I was looking at the business stuff, and I was looking at the trading stuff, and I had to ask myself a decision. I needed to make a decision. I was like, which one of these two is the thing that I enjoy doing the most? It's like I'm doing this purely because of the money. It's like why else would you be like pushing buttons and trying hoping that you make some money? And then the other side, I was actually doing it because there was some creation involved, there was some building involved, there was some thinking involved. This I was like, dude, just like this right here, 10 times easy, because I had to put it down on a paper. And if you ever, like, whoever's watching this, if you ever struggle when you want to really make a decision in your life, simply take a piece of paper, draw a line in the middle, give yourself a bunch of reasons why you're doing it. Give yourself a bunch of reasons why you're doing it. I mean, you can go much deeper into it, but the easiest way I found it, I literally always just take a piece of paper, draw a line in the middle, and start writing down stuff on why I'm like doing this side and why am I doing it this side. But then you need to really, really ask yourself the question is like, what do you really want again? It comes right down back to that. What do you want to spend your time on was the first question I asked myself. And then it also, once you learn a little bit more, to me, it became like, okay, now you know this about yourself. Now, what do you really want? Because if you're not clear on that, if you're not clear on what you really want, then you will be distracted by many other things. And that's why, again, I started this beginning of this conversation with saying that in this year, in 2025, the question that I had to spend the most time on for at least 3 weeks, probably, because of different things that happened in my life, I was like having to figure out what it came back to me having to answer that question. What do I really want? Because when you ask someone, what is your goal? Maybe they'll give you a figure or say, I want to build massive business, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But again, all of that, I had to also ask myself, is that someone else's dream? Like, is this a dream someone else sold me? Or is this something I really want to do?
Hmm.
And why do I really want to do it? It's like,
Yeah, I'm curious when you talked about being a little bit different. I think that's hard for men, particularly in those formative teenage years when you want to be part of a tribe. And then when you reach a certain point in life and everybody's kind of off trying to do this thing called life, you then start maybe experimenting, but you're still boxed in to needing and wanting to be part of a tribe. You were unapologetically authentic. You cut your hair differently. You wore different clothes than everybody else. Was that intentional to be disruptive, or
it
was that
like
authenticity trying to come out?
it was it's just something that always happened. Like it was not something I needed to think about. It was something I wanted to do. It's not
Mm.
like I was like sitting there thinking, how can I yeah, how can I piss off my friends? Like I'm not
Sure.
sitting there
Yeah.
thinking like how can I angry them and like basically try to figure out like like you poke the bear, like I was literally in my thinking process at the time was like this was something that was somehow in my DNA or in my kind of like, I don't know, man, it just happened. It was just like, this is what I enjoy doing. So I'm going to enjoy doing this more. For an example, my personality is a very strong personality in terms of like in high school, for an example, there was this one coach, uh, like a sports coach, and he was like a very important one at the time for later, in terms of like what he was doing. So again, I'm going to give the D1 football coach example. Let's say he was like coaching the normal team, and then he was coaching the D1 football team as well. So, however, me and this guy, we didn't really get along too well, and he knew I wasn't going to change nothing just because of him. And he really liked going at like just going at me, like just going at me and trying to pin things on me, even if it wasn't me. Which I was like, you know what, my guy, I ain't gonna step back from none of this stuff. I ain't gonna change for none of this stuff, and I'm also not gonna step back from none of this stuff. So that really put me at a point where I knew that's why I knew, like in my thinking and in my operation and how I always operated, I've always been a person that, and when I backtrack and I had to think about this, in that year, I won the Players Player of the Year, which means is that it's not the coach saying, "Oh, this is my star player" or whatever for the year. It was the team. They were saying, "Hey, man, you led from, it wasn't our captain at the time, but you were leading us. You know, you were picking us up when everyone was down. Like you were doing this for us. You were dragging us through when no one wanted to go." So for me, that is real leadership. And I'm not saying that's because something I did, but it's something I observed, and also something I observe in different companies and in different cultures and all around the world. I know, I know right now the thing that the highest thing that's in need. And that's why, for an example, someone like Donald Trump is coming in, he's shaking the tree again, is because there's some real leadership needed. There's some real like balls needed to basically to be able to plant a flag and say, we ain't moving. Like you trying to move us, this is what we believe in, and we ain't moving. You can try to move us, but at the end of the day, it's like real leadership are the thing that is in need, like not just in Africa, not just in the West, all around the world. It's because of how things, in my opinion, have like kind of uh evolved, and how people like those that cycle. I'm not entirely sure what you call that cycle actually. That weak men cycle, and then you see obviously that you've heard multiple podcast people speak about this. But yeah, so that, but the cycle that I'm referring to, right?
Yes.
Because that's exactly where I believe, and that's also the effect of technology on people, but also multiple other economical and cultural like waves that we've been experiencing. But I truly believe that you know within this religious scope of things, and within your purpose scope of things in leadership, I think many people have like this discombobulated view of all of these things, because at the end of the day, it does come down to, number one, having peace in your own mind, of your own thinking, protecting that, and then knowing that the energy that you're having on output each and every single day of your life is something that you feel is actively having an impact in some way. But that impact can come in many different forms and ways. Like
Mm.
you could be sharing a story. You could be sharing something that's, I wouldn't even say authentic. You could be sharing something that is going to impact someone because you felt what it done to you, and someone else needs this story. That's why you'll see all these people with these prison stories some of them turn into really powerful marketers or people, because they have an anchoring powerful prison story. And who doesn't want to look at this hero story coming from? Because you see a lot of these guys in the West right now. You see a lot of them. A lot of them are being great coaches for people, or something. But at the end of the day, you know, whether you want to believe it or not, they've somehow earned it to get there. Whether they didn't or did not, there's some of them, that's a completely like a principle for another time. But like, they have the anchoring story, which many people have been sold on through Hollywood hero figure stories, which is the whole thing. We actively, people in general, they seek, and this is a deeper thing, but they seek a leader. They want someone to show them what they're supposed to be doing. And if they cannot find that, they will find it in something else. Like they will create, I don't know, little statue or whatever. But the whole point is that people are out there actively looking for the answer, looking for the truth. And that's how all of that is kind of connected. That's why people's truths are different. But yeah, man.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So I hear it. I hear that there has to be a surrender component, right? That men have to give up something in order to have that internal peace. Because what I see is internal turmoil, but because it is as if there is a battle to fit in to an outside expectation versus having
Yeah.
just the serenity of authenticity and of giftedness. And now you go and act and do to fulfill your purpose, which is to give it to someone have it received, and then that fulfillment comes back to you. That cycle is a beautiful thing. I think most men struggle in finding entry into that cycle. Is that fair?
Well, I'll answer it like this, or I'll kind of talk on the topic like this. If you speak to anyone that's super intelligent, or really, really intelligent, you will see that they will kind of like, let's say for example, you ask Elon this question, right? You will hear him answer you in his way, or in his frame of reference, in terms of like really trying to understand what's important to him, and what he's learned, and how he navigates his way through the world. But really important thing is like your brain, that's why I said is a supercomputer, right? So when you look at your worldly views, your beliefs, all of these things, they do mold the way you see life. They do mold the way you think. They do mold all of these things, right? And that's why all this theory around programming your brain, around all that stuff, it's very true. Because at the end of the day, it's like if everyone's truths were the same, there would be world peace. Like, and if we would have world peace, would it even be a place where you want to live? Like, where everyone would just be happy? Everyone would just have a happy meal and be like, yo, like everyone would just be like, because I think about this a lot, man. That's why I like, but does it somehow make sense? I mean, I know I
Yeah,
didn't answer that
absolutely.
straight, but because look, at the end of the day, that's why I was just saying it's anchored, it's anchored for me right now. The thing that I'm practicing a lot is my own principles. It's anchored in that log back work that I've done to try to understand more about myself as I'm learning every single day more about
Mhm.
myself, and as I'm learning about the world. Because obviously, the more you learn about the world, the saying goes that the more you understand that you know nothing, but the more also you learn about yourself, you come back to understand that internally the reason why questions lie internally is because number one, DNA, number two, also spirituality, and then all of these things, they're connected to answering those hard internal questions. And that's why it's so hard for people in the 20, well, in whatever century we are right now, just in terms of like trying to understand. It's like, I cannot sit still for more than 10 minutes in a room and think. I need to do something. Like, I have to do something. I have to keep my brain busy. But it's also there are so many reasons why this is happening too. But all of this stuff is creating this shaking, discombobulated feeling in terms of like a self-centered piece, in terms of understanding how you create from your own internal. And that's why I've mentioned this. I've mentioned this some time ago, but I believe, and I recently kind of like put some puzzles together because I've read like I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I've read like the Numa Elish, the Bhagavad Gita. Um, I'm busy reading the Dead Sea Scrolls. Um, I obviously read the Bible. I 2 years ago I dated a Jewish girl, which led me to reading the Torah. Um, and also the man, I read it like 2 days ago. The Quran. Yeah, the Quran. And once you start kind of like, I enjoy reading from all these perspectives because it really keeps me centered and really just trying to understand again my truth. And again, my truth might not be your truth or someone else's truth, but these are things that I, in my own personal life, I just cannot ignore them. Like I cannot, if I ignore them, my own view on that is that I am naive, right? Like I am the one that's thinking that I know everything, or thinking that one perspective is the only truth. So that's why this kind of brings me to this point where, I believe you will be guided by wisdom and knowledge in terms of really trying to understand, what your little ultimate form is that you're really trying to work towards. But that ultimate form is then also connected towards your, what I would call your God self. And
Yeah.
what that really.
Yeah, God's self. So I'd love to go there for just a minute before we move into AI. So um, the journey inside feels overwhelmingly difficult, Jay. And I know there are books about how to do a spiritual journey, how to go inside and find the answers. It We live in a very human world where that is maybe the minority of people on that journey versus the majority, and that spirituality, or the hole that people fill in in their being, is actually a spiritual hole that cannot be filled with anything earthly. But boy, we spend a lot of time trying to do that. Do you have any advice for young men who are feeling a pull, feeling a call, feeling an emptiness, and they just don't know what the first step is?
Okay, so let me understand the question just correctly. Is this like a correlation in between material things, pushing for material things, and then trying to understand the balance between the spirituality and pushing very hard to earn things or achieve things?
Yeah, I think people believe the answers on the outside, and we have posited here several times that the answers are inside. But boy, we spend a lot of time looking externally for them, to grab them and then stick them in our soul to
Yeah.
fix it. But
So
that's not the
look,
answer.
I think like first thing is I actually like, and this I'm gonna give you a straight answer on this because I had I don't even want to give this power and bringing this back up, but my mindset back in the day was not very wealth driven, was not very and that's why I'm not even going to mention what it was because I ain't giving that no power. So the whole point here is that right now, I don't believe money is a bad thing, and I'm going to start there. Okay, money in general, the principle of money is not a bad thing. If you understand what business actually is in general, it's literally a form of communication, but also the highest level which I believe that you can operate in and out of life of communication. So that's what business is. It's like there are many different definitions, obviously for what business is, but the whole point is it's a form of communication where you're going out and you're letting people know that you got this thing or this thing that can help them, and then they're like, oh, then you're capturing that value, and then obviously, so from one perspective is, for an example, money in itself is not a bad thing. However, like is when that becomes the only thing that runs your life, or then you start stepping into this thought process where you're trying to actively think how you're going to extract money from people without actually doing good into this world. And this I learned very deeply in terms of really trying to understand, what is the difference between being money hungry and the balance between like things, physical things. And now I like things. I like things just as much as probably anyone else would, kind of say that, oh no, I don't like things. But really, at the end of the day, I like a nice car. I like a nice house. I like these things. I do. It's a thing I do understand about myself. Are there things I'm working towards? Of course there are. But these things, on the earthly perspective where we are, I believe that those are little thingies that you can work towards. You want a nicer car? Then figure it out. Like, like then you really want that because that's why I started. It becomes right back down to this thing. If you look at these manifestation principles and you connect them to like a not even I don't even want to say a religious view, but if you look at a manifestation principle, what it will be is that you must already feel like you own the thing. You must already feel like you are there because what is there? If we're always chasing there, or if we're always chasing the thing, then we'll always feel in a lack, right? In a lack for or not having the thing. It's just this perspective between trying to understand, and this is why I really believe it's so internal for understanding like what you really want, because you are the only person in your life that can make a decision towards where you're going, and no one else can help you make that decision. No one. Like they can guide you, like they can shape you, they can help you, but you at the end of the day still need to make the decision. And when you make the decision, the action needs to follow to back up all this, this stuff. Because at the end of the day, that's why, I started on that because before we kind of recorded is because for me, one thing was very, very important this year because my knowledge stretches over a lot of domains and a lot of things that I, earthly and spiritually and all these things, which are really brought me really back down together to really over the last 2 years really dialing in on like artificial intelligence. Because, and that's to answer the artificial intelligence question, I guess. It's because AI in general, it's a general purpose technology, and the more I started to learn about AI, what is AI, like what is this thing, this alien tech, all these things that I knew in my life, all of them, like, again, from a spiritual perspective, from a business perspective, from a technology perspective, from an economics perspective, from a behavioral science perspective, like from even from a neuromarketing perspective, like all of these things, they started to come together and really like it snapped with me because I made my first video on AI stuff like 3 or 4 years ago. But the whole point about that is, again, that no one really watched that video. It's like got like 100 views, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's like I didn't really get it back then, but the more I kind of leaned into it, I was like, wow, this stuff is like, it's going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to create a lot of new opportunities. And it's going to be super important for people to understand how to adapt to it and how to align with it technically, to ally with it, because you will never beat the tech. It's like trying to beat electricity. It's like you're not gonna beat electricity. It's like, sure, you can try, but yeah, it's like I'm like, how do you beat electricity? But anyway, so it's like you can really try hard. But at the end of the day, for humans to be more to not lose a sight of your purpose, for an example. And I like the purpose-driven question. I always ask people, I was like, what if you had no purpose? What would you do?
Hmm.
Like, well, like what would you do? So that's why I always start there. I'm like, dude, remove purpose for like one figure here, and what would you then want to do? It's like, well, I enjoy doing these things, and then you go call that your purpose. Because again, for me, I feel like, well, not feel like, this is a truth in my own, is that it's not about your passion. I've mentioned this a few times. It is about your path. Like,
Hmm.
because a passion can be developed in a span of like maybe in 2 to 3 years. Like, you learn enough about it, you develop a path. You learn enough about it, you do it. People around you like pump you up. They're like, wow, dude, this is a cool thing. Then you get into the community, you learn about it, you read about it, you're doing it every single day. All of a sudden, that's your passion. You're like, wow, I'm so passionate about throwing this football. I've been passionate about this ever since I was 2 years old. Well, duh, your dad gave you a football and said, hey, son, this is how this thing works. Maybe you should come and watch the game with me. Like, so the whole point is, you develop a passion. It's the lack of knowledge and awareness about the thing that leaves people in the background just being like, oh, I
Hmm.
don't really know what my thing is, but you never really put your toes in the water. So until you put your toes in the water, that's why I'm not afraid of like de-skinning myself and really trying to understand what am I becoming, because I've went through multiple phases where I have been, let's say for an example, playing influencer, phase one, phase two, like morphing out of that into really trying to understand, okay, what did I learn here? What can I apply here? Now, where am I going? Because at the end of the day, I think a big key component, which I want to kind of like just bring in here, is that I think anyone can be successful. Okay. Anyone. And again, defining success is really, let's just say you have a money figure. I think anyone can hit a money figure if that's your measurement of success or fulfillment or whatever. It's just whether you actually want to or not. And this will come back. It sounds like some Alex Hormozy advice here, but at the end of the day, it's just really coming back down to whether you really want to do it or not. And if you want to do it, we can then push all these other things aside, which is not it, and then just go do it. And that's why for me, like right now, I mean, there's some private equity stuff that I'm involved with, and the AI, the main AI is the main focus component is on the AI stuff, which is the stuff I really love and enjoy doing. And then obviously the private equity stuff, which has been, it's now been about 7 months where I've been like heavily involved with private equity stuff, where I've needed to put on my boots and you know put on my new boots and trying to like kind of like go through it, where I know I'm not no expert in private equity. I just know, for an example, that it is something in the future which I wanted to do, which I'm like, you know what? 5, 10 years from now, I want to start my own private equity firm. I want some venture capital. I want some this. I want some that. But now the universe was like, hey man, it's like you want to do this thing, and that's the one thing I want to say here. I think many times we think that we're going to do a thing a certain way, right?
Mhm.
We think that I'm going to go to university. I'm going to build $1 billion business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But really, the path that we're taking to get to that end goal is never the one that obviously like we're like, oh, here's all the steps. Let me go do all the steps. Haha, like like I reached the end goal. It'll be like, told you guys, here's everything. So because that path, the universe, God, however you want to see it, will bring people into your life as you attract them into your life. As you vibrate. And as you really go out and you stay true to that vision, that's why I started back. What do you want? The vision inside, that internal thing that you've created somehow. Like if you stay true to that, and this is something I remind myself every single day, and I have to. Like I remind myself about this every single day. It's like, dude, if you want to achieve this thing, and this is your path, then you need to be patient. Then you need to show up. Because why? There's some other people that are looking up to you. There's some other young kid that's looking up to you, and you don't want him to follow the path of this person that's showing you a bunch of stuff and a bunch of, so you need to show up, like, because at the end of the day, that's how you become a better man, in my opinion, is through showing up, is through being able to, again, be, for me it's principle driven, and to be able to show up. And that's why those principles were so important to me. It's because they do define your everyday actions, but they define your everyday thoughts. And that's why all this habit stuff will be connected in between with it. But I think if you can sort out your principles, I think you can sort out your habits. I wouldn't say sort out your habits first. I think if you can, like, because if sorting out your principles is like sorting out your thinking, it's like, and then you can try to understand that, your health component, your spirituality component, your fulfillment component. You'll have these buckets, I guess, that you'll try to kind of like balance.
Yeah, John Maxwell put it put it an interesting way a couple of years ago at a conference. He said, if you don't, you use the word principles, he used the word values. If you don't know what you value internally in this world, then you, it's very difficult for you to be for anything if you can't define the foundation that you stand on. No wonder you're so confused in the world. So why don't you take the step back? Maybe that is the first step men need to step on is what do you value and why? And that's what you're going to lean on when you're trying to have influence in the world. Is that a fair statement?
One, yeah. So one thing, I think so. Look, I don't have all the answers, right? I don't. No one has all the answers, but I can. That's why I said I will try to give my perspective in terms of at this moment in my life, being 25 years old, how I see things, right? What I've learned, where I'm going, the stuff that I'm working on. And again, this is my own path. I'm sharing what I've learned on my path. And later in this year, I'll start making more content. That is a commitment, which I've made to the people. But at the end of the day, also component, which I want to kind of quickly just make on top of that there, and this is completely nothing to do with the question or anything, but I just think it's very important, which I mentioned in previous internet marketing stuff. I think right now the internet is bashing everyone's brains, right? In terms of like really trying to shape your own path. Just don't be sold on the internet into a direction which your, I don't know, your favorite YouTuber is telling you that this is the way, or whatever, because that happened to me, almost happened to me. And in terms of like going through this thinking path too, because I was also studying, I always tell people study free stuff, study paid stuff, study on stage stuff, study stuff in books. Like you need to study all that stuff, especially on stage stuff. I think on stage stuff is like, the little bit of a bump, which a lot of people kind of throw away. Um, but at the end of the day, that's study, 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 and always keep asking questions. Always keep asking yourself, why are you doing this right now? Like you need to ask yourself that all the times. Like like if you're not excited about the things that you're working on, I believe that you will never you will never reach that sense of, if it is a fulfillment based question, is that you will never reach that pinnacle of fulfillment, because at the end of the day, I've seen with multiple successful people and mentors, and just through observing, once they've made a few mils, whatever that number is, a lot of them kind of like, come back to the main thing, which which is doing some sort of work, that they enjoy doing. And it like humbles you somehow, because you think you're gonna like push. Now, I'm not putting Elon in this frame just for an example. I'm saying, like, just give me an example. Like, I'm saying people that have made a multi-few $1 million and stuff like that. Like, you've seen them push, right? You see them push, and then you see them kind of like get stagnated, which is also a cycle and a pattern that I've seen. Then they kind of be like, okay, reset. Let me hire a thinking coach. Let me hire a whatever coach. And then they kind of come back to doing the thing that they enjoy doing. They just maybe do it a little bit differently. They still, so that's just me kind of like observing a few things in terms of my own path, and in terms of understanding, where my energy is supposed to go to into this year. That's why I mentioned this stuff about the private equity things. And, it's my focus, my energy lies into the things I enjoy doing. And at this moment, it's called the business, and really just wrapping heads around AI application. Yeah, AI application and AI solutions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Look, you've been so generous with your time. I really have been so intrigued by your content. You and Tim both helped me in building a brand and a platform to stand on. I appreciated it so much. Two wise young men in the world who were self-aware enough to share their giftedness through an academy. Excellent experience. I'll make sure that's in the show notes so people can connect. But I know you also have, do you still have self-built systems? Is
Yeah, I
that your
mean, yeah,
brand?
yeah. Yeah, so self-built is it is the baby. I guess it is in this case the baby which I've been molding and building for quite some time. It's been technically, through the evolution cycle, it's been almost 4 years now, but it's been a 3 year kind of like focus on AI, hard focus on AI for technically back and forth on 3 years now. Which has been a building process on top of that, but it's also evolution. But yeah, several systems is it's the main thing in terms of like what is anchored on my profile. I mean, people can go check out the website if they want to, go read a bunch. Um, but yeah, then there's the private equity stuff, which I will make content about and I will share. But yeah, I enjoy just sharing in perspective. I use my YouTube channels like a documentary sharing perspective, but also trying to add value. That's why you'll see my videos is all longer videos, because it's also not like one of those videos where it's like, hey guys, I'm in Thailand right now. What's up? I want to go do some backflips. So so yeah, it's like, some people from an educational perspective, I try to share as I can and as I grow, and I try to make it also engaging, because that's why I said there will be a focus a little bit later in this year for really high out production of content, and really a lot of things that we're going to be doing. Um, but yeah, man, that's it from my side. I mean, I just would I would leave people with this. I don't know if you have one last question or something, but I want to leave people with this last thought in terms of like really just trying to understand, how you're figuring things. Everyone's figuring it out. Every single day you're figuring it out. But at the end of the day, if you can stay truthful to yourself and trying to understand what excites you, and trying to basically just show up for yourself. If you can do that, like if you can show up for yourself, then you will be able to show up for other people, and that will keep you aligned, and it will keep you in check too, because then you've made a commitment to yourself, and that's, again, that is self-love. That's just saying, look, man, because obviously in my life God is important, but I do need you to understand that you cannot have that connection with the higher power, or with whatever you call it, if you do not have that self-love element, because that means that you're, in my opinion, that you're putting a big smile on. Yeah, so it means that you're trying, you're pushing, you're doing things, and at the end of the day, it's like, you can put a smile on your face and you can be happy internally, then you can keep going, bro. Like, you can keep going.
Incredible. Best best thing I've heard all week. Jay, thank you so much. If people want to follow your journey, if they want to connect, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, just like I said, I mean, Instagram and that stuff is cute, but really yeah, I'll be sharing a lot more in-depth stuff on YouTube. It's like I will be this year will there again later on there will be a lot of I mean probably a month from now or 2 months from now there will be a big push on YouTube with like a lot of more energy spent on YouTube. Again, I will also be sharing other shorter form pieces of content, but I don't like in my own opinion, I don't think short form content helps at all, to be honest. Like just from it's like I don't know, it's like some cereal that you eat and then you're like, okay, well, I'll come back later. So I think at the end of the day, YouTube would be the best. I mean, maybe even Instagram, LinkedIn, I share a lot of stuff too. LinkedIn network has grown really strong. But yeah, just whatever floats your boat. If you're a short form guy, then there's some short form stuff. If you're a long form guy, then there's some long form stuff.
Excellent. I'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. Jay, Jean-Jacques, thank you so much for the influence that you've had on me and my personal development, and for the light you shine, man. We need young leaders just like you making waves in this world. So I see you. Thank you for your words. Thank you for sharing today. You're an incredible human. Bless you, brother.
Appreciate the time, man. And yeah, we'll do this sometime soon again.
The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable.